Ladies and gentlemen, come gather round, come gather round, come gather around. Today, we're going to take a look at the box in the back of the hatchback, the Angry Accent. We did a bunch of servicing last week, getting this thing reasonably, hopefully reliable. This time, we got to make some changes to this, partly to make it handle a little bit better than the bowl of oatmeal that it's doing, and really, frankly, because it looks cool. So, we're going to get on that. Let's go. So last time we left this video about here. Let's bring it on. Oh my, what have I got in here? This. Manzo. Ever heard of them? Nah, me neither. Let's find out what it is. Why, it's a set of lowering springs. Ain't that cool? Apparently Manzo is related to Megane Racing. So these are lowering springs for the 06 to 2011 Hyundai Accent and Kia Rio. Apparently the same thing. This is a bit unusual to me. It's not often I see like the dead coils in the middle of a spring, so that's a little bit unusual. This closer fit is going to be a softer spring than you have here. But I don't know, that's weird. It'll probably work fine. First step, we got to raise the vehicle, get the old springs out. This is a torsion beam rear axle. It's like the cheapest way of doing something. It's dead simple and it does the job fairly well. A solid axle usually is not independent, so both wheels are going to bump all this at the same time. And this sort of does that, but instead of being completely solid and rigid, this is a U channel all the way across, and that U allows it to torsionally twist, giving you sort of independent suspension on a not independent suspension axle. One of the ways I like to make a front-wheel drive car handle better is by limiting or restricting the independence of the rear suspension, so that when you go into a corner and you turn and the weight of the car goes onto this side, if we can like unweight the inside rear wheel or take it off the ground completely, reduce some of the traction in the back of the car, the back becomes a little bit more harried, I guess. And then the front can do what it needs to do and the back just kind of becomes a bit of a dance. So if I can come into a corner pretty hot, get on the brakes, stay on the gas, turn the wheel, the weight shifts onto the left front as I'm turning that way. Pick the right rear off the ground. All the cornering is done by the left rear, and it can even be drifting. I don't really care. As long as the back is a little bit loosey-goosey, I can stay on the gas and keep the front ahead of it. I can pull off a pretty quick time. Maybe not in this car, but it's still going to be fun. Ways you can stiffen this suspension up, because it's a U shape, you could weld a plate on the bottom of this and stop it from resisting. I believe the Volkswagen guys do a lot of that. I don't know how much to weld. I'm not sure what math I would use to figure that out. So what I did is I bent up this piece of metal right here. Okay? It's a U shape, looks just like a sway bar. It's not entirely finished yet. And this is going to have brackets that attach to holes right here and be attached on both sides. And then this becomes another little resistible bar between both sides of the axle. There are companies that make these. They make them 16 millimeters. I don't have any 16 millimeter, but I have some 19 mil. Go big or go home. And this is what it's going to do. There are folks on the webs who say, that's not a sway bar, that's not how it works. It has to be attached to the middle. Normally, yeah, but not in this case. In this case, it doesn't have to be held in the middle because it's already one piece. All I'm trying to do is add to the torsional resistance of this. And I'm going to do it by adding another bar to tie them together, in essence beefing this up to stop it from being independent. I want it less independent. I want it more rigid, but I don't know how far to go. So I'm thinking, that's how far I'm going to go. I just got to make some brackets, stick them in the holes that are already here, and to do that I got to pull the springs out, and I'm already putting lowering springs in. So how cool is that? Let's get on it. One of the nice advantages of this vehicle is it's a bit newer, so nothing is rusted and corroded and disgusting. I didn't need to soak it with a penetrant at all.
If you loosen the shocks, and it's surprising how much this torsion beam torsions, you just pull out the springs and then put in the springs and then do up the shocks. It's like you could do this in minutes in a shopping mall with nobody looking, or security looking. If you're quick, I guess. That always works.
So these holes around the spring pocket are a sweet place to attach little brackets for the sway bar. These are 5 inches by 3 inches, 1/4 inch thick, and the holes are 1/2 inch, drilled every 0.566. So I made them adjustable. You don't have to. If you don't really know what the heck you're doing, it's nice to make it tunable so you can go, yeah, that's too much, and take some of the sway bar out of it. So I'm just going to put this somewhere where it'll drop on my head, and then this one's going to go over here, and I'm going to aim for the middle just for a good starting point. And then I can go, this needs to be stiffer or not so stiff. In theory, these will fit under the spring. 1/2 inch bolts. There's probably a metric equivalent. I don't really care. Not like you're going to drive this and go, oh, I say, are those 12mm bolts? Okay, nuts. I'm going to need some nuts. Okay, we're going to go just over half. Should probably go there. I will change these to Niwak once it's done, because I don't want them coming off. But right now, I want them to come off. Except I'm putting them on. Yay! See where the other one went? Sure I had 4 in my hand. 4 in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. Hooray!
I took the sway bar off the car and welded it on the floor. Once it's tacked together so it'll fit, because nothing ever fits the way you think it'll be, and you can never weld it off the car and then it magically fits when you put it on, because just fate.
I made this out of 3/4 inch cold rolled steel, a couple 1/4 inch plates, and we'll attach it, see if it makes a difference. Skiver!
Interestingly, you don't really need to use a wrench in the top end to hold things together, while on the other hand I'm using an impact to buzz it up together quite nice. I did use a wrench, don't need to use a wrench, it works.
One of the joyous bits of fun with lowering a vehicle is you actually have less travel. So shortening the bump stop is often a good way to go. On some vehicles I shorten the bump stop, on others I just drill a bunch of holes to make them softer. We're going to find out which way to go after it's too late. The bump stop appears to be part of this, so I wonder if I can pull that apart and shorten it. Doesn't really look like it. What I kind of want is this part is tight up here, it's not so tight down below, so I want to keep this part, but I need it shorter. I usually cut them about in half. So I'm going to disassemble this and see how these are joined together, and how can I shorten this and put the dust boot back onto it. So let's get this thing undone. How is that attached? That's how that's attached. I think I can do a pretty good job of this.
This bump stop has 5 bumps, and 5 is certainly an odd number, so I made an executive decision and cut off the bottom 2. And then I took it over to the belt sander and rounded off the end until it was small enough to fit into the dust boot of the shock absorber and hold itself together, in theory, the way it was.
One shorter shock. Short shocks. Short shocks are so sexy.
And if it didn't take too long putting it back together, you should be able to remember how it goes back together. If not, play the video in reverse. That's what I always do. I live my day in reverse.
Those will be fully tightened when it's sitting on the ground, so the rubber bushings have no twist, because we don't like the twist. Let's twist again like we did last summer. Let's twist again like we did last year. Of course, for the front, we got to pull the struts out and disassemble those. That's always fun.
And to avoid the inevitable disappointment, I used my favorite penetrant, Move It. Not sponsored, but certainly open to sponsorship. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, say no more. Move It is just sold close to my house. So that's the stuff I use.
So I missed pulling the tops out because I apparently forgot to push record. 3 bolts, 3 nuts.
This part is sketchy, and you want to point this towards your friend, not towards your face, so that when you're compressing the spring and it all goes wrong, you don't have to spit your teeth out like Chiclets. Do they still make Chiclets?
And I said don't use an impact for that. I'm using an impact for that. Shh.
I have found spinning the nut off the end of shock absorbers and struts sometimes undoes the valve inside the shock absorber. So then you're kind of screwed. You can see the difference in the spring heights here and the dead coils at the bottom of the spring. The dead coils, they're dead because they're stacked together when it's assembled. They're just a tight set of coil springs to make the spring long enough that it doesn't fall out when everything's fully extended, but they collapse really easily so that it'll sit at the right height you want it to be. I mentioned at the start of the video that the dead coils were in the middle of the rear springs. Kind of weird, but you know, you want to be middle of the road in everything.
There's a flat in here. Pay attention to that. I'm telling you. This side's different than the other. The strut's different, the top mounts are different, the end link is different. I'm kind of wondering if this thing had been hit or something, but I don't see any evidence of paint. But this side of the suspension is different than the other. It's kind of weird.
Once we got the thing on the ground, I discovered the extenders I used on my hoist were now too big, and I had to jack the car up to get the hoist out of it. Ha ha ha.
So the last thing you want to do is a wheel alignment. The lucky thing is the only thing that's adjustable on this car is toe. So I use a couple toe plates, and all you got to do is crack this lock nut and then turn this in or out to correct the toe in or out of the vehicle. And that's the only thing that's adjustable. So let's give that a go. So you can pull your 2 tape measures, check the measurement you have. In this case, with the front wheel drive, I aim for a 1/16 of an inch toe out in the front. And we are right there. Check the video up here on how to do wheel alignments and what you're all looking for and how you want it to work. That's a pretty good one. So now that it's lowered, what's it like to drive? Not a lot different. It doesn't porpoise as much as it did with the soft original springs, but it's not bad. It's like acceptable. It kind of feels like a stock Honda Civic. Could use some more rear sway bar. That was 19 millimeter up from the aftermarket 16. I'll probably make one that's 1 inch, which is like what, 24 millimeters? We'll see. May try a 7/8 just to see, just to make it a little more tail happy. Other than that, it's good. It's decent. It rides nice. It's a little more sporty. It looks a little bit better. But next video, we're going to take a look at what have we got going on here. In the meantime, thanks for watching.